Have you ever sketched a musical idea and thought, it's nice, but it feels kind of thin? Well, what if you could change that fast? In this video today, I will show you how to create sketches that sound full, emotional, and inspiring. The kind that practically beg to be orchestrated. And to start, we will look at something you definitely know: Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. And how even a simple idea can lead to something powerful. It all begins with one very simple step. Let me show you. Let's just listen to this sketch here, and that's a rather simple sketch. You see there in blue, that is just the chord that I had in mind, and this is a reharmonized version. And also it is a 4-staff sketch. Sometimes people only see the 2 staffs up here, but it's actually 4 in this case, since I wanted to separate those functions. And in particular, we have obviously the melody on top. That is what everybody knows. And I would boldly say everybody. Down there, this is a little motor, which provides harmony. So that is rhythmic harmony in a way. Here we go down even into the root tones. Now let's listen to this thing. A quick tip before we move on: always work in a non-destructive way. I highly recommend making a copy of your sketch before you move forward. That way, you can easily go back, create variations, and build on earlier ideas without ever losing anything valuable along the way. You will also notice that while the original chords are still visible at the top, they've been softened. I'm intentionally pushing them into the background because from here on, I want the focus to shift away from full chords and towards intervals and sections. And speaking of sections, there is a fantastic little trick I want to show you. It's based on a simple 3+3+3 structure, a very powerful interval theory hack that makes it surprisingly hard to go wrong. And if you are new to interval theory, here is how it works. The numbers represent half steps or chromatic steps from one note to the next. In a vertical structure, we always start with the lowest note and count upward. So, for example, starting from an E flat, we move up 3 half steps to the G flat. And then another 3 to A natural, and finally 3 more to the C. This gives you a tritone-based structure that's incredibly flexible. In fact, with just this setup, you can move into 8 different tonal centers, and every one of them will sound right to the listener. Let's quickly explore this before we come back to Beethoven. Now, it's all based on simple chromatic movements, using just 2 voices. By shifting the 2 lower voices upward, we create a very specific structure that we call a 3+2+3 IC, standing for interval combination. And what's exciting is that no matter how you shift, whether you move the bottom voices up or the top voices down, the overall structure stays consistent. And you can see it clearly in the numbers. They always stay the same. I encourage you to experiment with it and see how far you can take this idea. And now, back to Beethoven. You will recognize that out of a sudden it sounds a bit richer, more colorful, not because it's color-coded, but because we have way more chromatic lines in here. And chromatic lines give this very romantic feel. I want to quickly highlight a few of those functions. Everything shown in blue is part of harmony or rhythmic harmony. Purple shows the lead line. That is where our attention will go to. Then these things in green here, those are side lines. Here I had to make a decision because it is a side line, but it's also a chromatic line that I wanted to highlight. So it could have been green, but I decided to go with red in the beginning to show the chromatic line in there. Now that we have a solid sketch in place, it's time to take it a step further. The orchestration you are about to hear was beautifully written by Alexandre Manoukian, one of my students actually. First, we will listen to the full orchestration so you can get a feel for how everything comes together. And then we will dive deeper and explore how each orchestral section, the woodwinds, the brass, and the strings, plays its unique role. Along the way, I will share some powerful orchestration insights you definitely don't want to miss. So let's jump right in and listen. There are a few things going on that I want to highlight. Don't double for no reason. If you don't know why you double a line or a phrase, simply don't do it. In this case right here, that's an octave doubling. And this was done purposely because it shifts the energy into a higher register. And this potentially opens up the middle register for the brass that comes in later. And there are a few moments in here that actually also go hand in hand, like this thing here, clarinet and the flutes. So they play in octave positions to give the clarinet a bit of a brighter presence in the mix. The flute on its own would have lacked the body and the strength in the middle register. So the clarinet and the flute, they complement each other. When we go to the second page, I want to highlight two things. What happens the moment we go into this climax? This happens the moment when the brass come in. You realize that most of the woodwind instruments go up in a higher register. So they open up to the top while the brass and the strings move down to the bottom. So they provide the low bottom end, and also here in the tuba, the bass trombone, they help the contrabasses to have a bit more of a round bottom end. Let's listen to these sections individually. The woodwinds never played the melody, so they purely focused on the motor, on rhythmic harmony. They have a sideline that happened in the flutes and the clarinets up there. They have their set functions they focus on. And as you can tell, it sounds complete. That is an important takeaway. Complete your sections. Speaking about being complete, let me actually transition to the brass. And they have a wonderful sideline here in the horns that cut through everything else. Pretty simple, harmony and a sideline. And how do we know that's a sideline? Well, because every action takes place in the string section. So let's actually cover real quick the strings. Here we go. This is one line and 3 octaves. If you just had the first and second violins on top of the brass, you will hear it, but you won't recognize it as a strong line. And this always sounds great. And then in here, the harp is just for decoration to provide a bit more energy. Oh, that's a wild run. I probably would check beforehand if that is really playable, but it looks good to me. Let me quickly show you this whole thing once more. You immediately see how these orchestral parts now work together and complement each other. So it's a dialogue, really. If you enjoyed this, you definitely don't want to miss the next video, because we will continue our exploration with Beethoven, creating a second version based on a brand new sketch. I will also reveal even more orchestration insights and workflow tips to help you bring your own music to life even faster and more creatively. And if you would like to dive deeper and join a growing community of composers who work with interval theory, I invite you to jump on the school waiting list. You will find the link below and in the description box. And I would love to personally welcome you into the community. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.